We went from 7 billion to 8 billion people from 2010 to 2023, but in the next 80 years or so, our population is only going to increase to 8.8 billion. Our population growth is slowing down fast and even going in reverse in some countries. In fact, some nations will see their populations get cut in half. These are the fastest dying countries in the world. Why are they dying? Can it be stopped? Is this even a bad thing? The answer is never simple, but don't worry. We'll be diving into all the details. Bulgaria. If we go by the predictions for the next 3 decades since 2020, Bulgaria actually lands the number 1 spot with the highest expected rate of decline at 22.5%. But if we look at the average population growth rate from 2011 to 2021, the decline is 0.66%. But what this number means is that the country has lost 470,000 people since 2011. Its current population as of 2020 is 6.9 million. Bulgaria's population will go down by 22.5%, from 6.9 million in 2020 to 5.4 million in 2050. A big reason is many people are leaving the country. Bulgaria has the lowest per-person income in the EU, which is a big part of why its population has dropped in the past 10 years. Being in the EU means Bulgarians can look for jobs and live in other member countries, where the money opportunities are often better. Bulgaria's low birth rates also play a part in the population going down. But that's not the whole story. The number of babies born isn't way lower than in nearby countries. It's more about lots of people leaving, making Bulgaria one of the leaders in having fewer people. And the next country I'm going to talk about is pretty similar to Bulgaria as well. But before I get into that, let's talk about what it really means for a population to decline. What does a declining population mean? Population decline, or depopulation, means fewer people in a place. Throughout history, the total human population on Earth kept getting bigger, but now it looks like this long trend might stop. But you must be wondering, is it a bad thing for populations to decline? Having fewer people around surely sounds like a bad thing, right?
The decline of births is in a state of crisis. I believe we are at a time when we have to take urgent measures.
See, many people, especially business people, think having fewer people hurts the economy. They worry about making less money, as pay might go up, and people might not buy as much with fewer humans around. However, studies say population decline might not be bad for the economy. Emphasis on the word might. The country's overall money can increase, and how much each person earns could also increase. At the same time, more people might be working, and fewer people might be out of jobs. This info comes from a study in 2023 that checked 19 countries and how population and GDP relate. These were mostly Eastern European countries, and some of them are even mentioned in my list. So how could this be possible? The idea is that bringing in technology that makes work easier could be one reason why the GDP doesn't drop when there are fewer people in these 19 countries. Economically, it might not be a disaster when there are fewer people. So worries that the economy will stall when there are fewer people might not be true. Now, let's turn to our next dying country, Moldova. From 2011 to 2021, Moldova's average population drop is 0.82%. Moldova was once in the Soviet Union, and that affects how its population has changed. Since Moldova became independent in 1991, nearly 1.5 million people left. Why? Most went away, and that's why the population will go down by 16.7%. From 4 million to 3.4 million by 2050. Things like poverty and corruption made young, skilled workers leave, while older people faced poor living and high death rates. Like many places nearby, more people are dying than being born. But what's hitting hard is many leaving. Moldova is lacking skilled pros and workers, and some say this is a big crisis. Moldova is another leader in population decline in Europe. High death rates, fewer births, and lots of outward migration are why. Right now, no Moldova city, even the capital, is growing because of nature, not even a tiny bit. It isn't even reaching 0.1%. For some reason, we're seeing this kind of trend with European countries, which warrants a deeper look into them. But first, let's take a look at this next country, which has it even worse: Croatia. Croatia's population is set to drop by 18.0%. It's supposed to go from 4.1 million to 3.4 million in the next 30 years. The country reached its peak in 1991 with a population of 4.78 million, but it's been going down since due to an aging population and low birth rates. The country has been suffering from a negative 0.88% average population growth rate from 2011 to 2021. The number of people was highest in 1991, reaching 4.78 million, but it's been dropping since due to not many births and lots of old folks. Understanding what's happening in Croatia today requires looking back at its past as a part of Yugoslavia and the Civil War from 1991 to 1995. The war hit its economy hard, and recovery has been slow, even after joining the EU. Despite EU membership, Croatia's economy hasn't caught up, pushing many Croatians to search for better opportunities abroad. Another issue is a declining birth rate, which isn't enough to match the death rate, and an aging population makes this even more of a problem. By now, you're probably seeing a pattern. So before I move on to the next country, I have to talk about Europe's situation. What's going on in Europe? Dying countries can be spotted anywhere on the earth, but there's a specific pattern we're seeing with European countries. The pandemic was not kind to this region. 1.2 million people died in Europe because of COVID-19 between the years of 2020 and 2021. It bounced back in 2022, but this was partially because of 4 million refugees coming in from Ukraine. Eurostat predicts the EU population will peak at 453 million in 2025, then fall slowly to 420 million in 2100, based on fertility, mortality, and migration trends. Italy's population has already started shrinking, and it is expected to go from 59 million in 2022 to 50.1 million in 2100, which is a 15% drop. Spain's fall will be from 47.4 to 45.1 million, which is a 5% drop after reaching 50.5 million in 2045. These predictions span a long time, so their accuracy decreases as we move away from 2022, the first observed year. Generally, fertility and migration drive population changes. The data shows a continuous drop in total fertility rates for almost all EU countries over the decades, and high migration volatility, particularly due to situations in Syria and Ukraine. In the coming years, Europe's demographic landscape is going to shift significantly. The percentage of people ranging from 0 to 19 in the total population is projected to decrease from 20% in 2022 to 18% by the end of the century. Germany is an exception though, expecting an increase from 18.6% to 19.5% by 2100. Similarly, the working age population, which is from 20 to 64 years old, is anticipated to decline across all countries, going from 59% in 2022 to 50% in 2100. On the other hand, the elderly population, particularly those aged 65 or older, is predicted to increase. The proportion of those aged 80 or above is set to more than double, climbing from 6% to 15% of the population. Italy and Spain will witness this rise, reaching 16%, while in the other covered countries, it hovers around 13 to 14%. So young people are decreasing and old people are increasing. Will the next country on our list suffer from these same factors? Let's find out. Lithuania. Lithuania faces a substantial population reduction, with an estimated decline of 22.1% over the next 30 years. The population is projected to shrink from 2.7 million to 2.1 million. Like Bulgaria, Lithuania's primary population loss comes from people leaving the country en masse. For years, Lithuania has grappled with a diminishing population since gaining independence from the Soviet Union in 1990. However, a noteworthy change might be on the horizon. Positive net migration was recorded in 2021 for the first time in 3 decades. This was blamed on the increasing allure of economic opportunities within the country. While the decrease in immigration has temporarily slowed Lithuania's population decline, birth rates are still insufficient to match the nation's death rate. Sustaining positive population growth remains a challenge. Now, this next country doesn't suffer from the European curse, but it still doesn't have it good. Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a US territory, and it's losing people. Simply put, people are moving where money is. Like in many countries, Puerto Rico's people are leaving rural spots for better paying jobs. Residents have the freedom to live and work on the US mainland, and many are taking that chance. Plus, a low birth rate is another reason for the shrinking numbers, with only 0.9 births per woman in 2020, according to the World Bank. This isn't just Puerto Rico's issue, it's happening worldwide. Women are having fewer kids. In 1950, a woman had 4.6 kids on average. By 2017, it dropped to 2.4. By 2100, it's expected to go below 1.7. When women have fewer than 2.1 kids each, the world's population will hit its max in 2064 at 9.7 billion, then drop to 8.8 billion by the century's end. This, along with more old people, might become a demographic time bomb, where there aren't enough young people to back the economy. Projections say 23 countries, Japan and Italy included, might have their population by the century's end. And on that note, let's talk about Japan. Japan's birth rates have slid since 1970, but it was only in 2010 that the whole population started to fall. In Japan, 1.44 million people died in 2021, but only around 111,000 babies were born. The low birth rates also make Japan the place with the highest average age, hitting 49 years old. Many people blame Japan's youth for not prioritizing relationships or women, putting their careers over family. Is it a bad thing for populations to decline? But the reality is that the jobs in Japan just aren't good enough for comfortably supporting families. About 40% of people in Japan work low-salary, temporary, and part-time jobs, which makes having a family less feasible. And the stigma associated with said jobs makes it even worse. Japan gives us a very interesting and new look into this dying country phenomenon. So let us know in the comments if we missed any country. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.